Alright, what we're doing today is basically an extension of yesterday. We are solving equations by factoring, but they're not going to be nicely set up for us. We're going to have to rearrange some stuff. We're going to have to put it in what's called standard form. Standard form of a quadratic equation. Standard form is when it's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Standard form means everything's on one side and the other side is 0. And you have it all in order. You've got your x squared term first, your x term in the middle, and your constant at the end. These were already set up for you like that yesterday. Also, if possible, and it is possible, you want your x squared term, your coefficient, your a value, you want it to be positive. You can certainly factor when a is a negative number, but it's more difficult, and we've never practiced that really. So you want your a squared to be positive, you want everything on one side, you want the other side to be a 0, and you want it in order. So look at this problem. X squared minus 12 equals 4x. That is not in standard form. Why not? Yeah, the b, what's normally the b is on the other side of the equal sign. We need it to join with the x squared and the negative 12. The first step on these problems is basically moving stuff to the other side of the equal sign. And you always have a choice on what you can move. We could move the x squared and the minus 12, or we could move the 4x. The way I would make my choice is to look at your x squared term. If it's already positive, then you don't want to move it, or anything else that's with it. So we definitely don't want to move the x squared and the minus 12. We want to move that 4x. How do you make that 4x go to the other side? You want to subtract 4x from both sides. What's that going to leave over here? It's going to leave 0. We want one side to be 0. Now, where do I want to put that? I want to put it in the middle. I'm going to insert it in between these two terms. Now, normally I don't write this step. I just kind of look at it, and you got to understand if I'm moving that 4x to the other side, it's going to change signs because I got to subtract 4x's to make that go away. So let's rewrite this now in standard form. It would be x squared, then what? Minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. That's pretty much the only thing we're adding to today's lesson. It's not going to be set up for you in standard form. You got to move some stuff around first, and then it's just like yesterday. You factor it, and then you take those factors and make little baby equations, and you solve those little baby equations. Yes? Okay, so let's factor this thing. Now that we've got it in standard form, let's factor it. What's a times c here? Negative 12. So we're looking for the factors of negative 12 that could add up to a negative 4. Don't forget we're trying to get a sum of negative 4. We've got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. What's the winning pair? Please, 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 right here at this step, make your signs work to equal negative 4 when you add them. Because some of you are just putting a plus or a minus wherever you want to put it. The signs have to work. Which one has to be minus? The 6 has to be negative and the 2 has to be positive. That gives me a negative 12 when I multiply, and it gives me a negative 4 when I add them. Now, when I go to write it, if I've got one positive and one negative, I usually put the negative one first. To me, that makes it a little bit easier. It doesn't matter. I could put the plus 2x first and the minus 6x second, but I think it's easier to put the negative one first. What do I take out of the first two? X, and I'm left with x minus 6. What do I take out of the second two? A positive 2, and I'm left with x minus 6. Then take out x minus 6, and I'm left with x plus 2. Okay, so we arrive at our factors. Please make sure you understand what factors look like and what solutions look like. These are factors. They're still in the parentheses. Now I need the solutions. If x minus 6 equals 0, what does x equal? 6. That's one of my solutions. If x plus 2 equaled 0, what would x equal? Negative 2. So my two answers to the original problem are 6 and negative 2. Let's go back to what the original problem looked like. I want to show you how we can check this. You could put or actually it's and, because both of them work. And I do need both of them. 6 and negative 2 both work. Okay, our original problem looked like this. X squared minus 12 equals 4x, right? Let's put a 6 in there. Because that's what we just got as our answer. I'm checking my answer. What's 6 squared? What's 36 minus 12? Over here we would get 4 times 6, which is... Did 6 work? Yes, 6 is one of the solutions. What else should work? Negative 2 better work as well. Negative 2 squared minus 12 should equal 4 times negative 2. Let's see if it does. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. And 4 minus 12 is negative 8. And what's 4 times negative 2? So the negative 2 works and the 6 works. Those are the only two solutions to that problem. All right, number 2. 8x equals negative x squared minus 15. Definitely not in standard form. How do I know that this is an equation? There's an equal sign. And this isn't a normal equation. How do I know it's not a normal equation? Because it's got an exponent. Okay, this is not a normal equation. Normally we don't move everything to one side and let the other side equal 0. We only do that when we've got a factor. This is definitely a factoring problem if I've got an exponent. Okay, now which ones, what do I want to move here? I need to move the negative x squared and the minus 15. Even though that takes 2 things to move, some kids said, well, why don't we just move the 8x? Then we only have to move one thing. Why do I not want to move the 8x? Yeah, we want our x squared to have a positive number in front of it. So always look at your x squared. Look at the value of a. If it's negative, then you want to move it. Because when you move it to the other side, it's going to become positive. Because the way you get rid of negative x squared is to add an x squared to both sides. And the way you get rid of a minus 15, a negative 15, is to add a 15 to both sides. Okay, so let's rearrange this stuff then and tell me what it would look like now. Positive x squared plus 8x plus 15 equals 0. So in one step, we not only moved everything, but we also put it in the right order with x squared, x, and constant. When you shift something to the other side of the equal sign, all that happens is the sign changes. This becomes a positive, this becomes a positive. The 8x stayed exactly like it was because we didn't move it. All right, factor it, solve it. Tell me what you get. Hush, give everybody a chance. You're too fast, Jason. You already did it? Wow, y'all are fast. Okay, now let me show you what some kids do to me on quizzes and tests. They'll tell me that the answers are x plus 3 and x plus 5. Are those solutions? No, what are those called? Those are called factors. That's what's going to lead me to my 2 solutions. So you got to know when you're supposed to stop at the factoring and when you're supposed to give me solutions. How do I know I'm supposed to give solutions to this and not just factor it and stop? Because there's an equal sign. If it equals something, then I need the answer. So what are the answers for x? Negative 3 and negative 5. So are we okay with that one? All right, look at number 3. Negative x squared equals 5x. Who can put that in standard form for us? Jason? X squared plus 5x equals 0. Do you see what he did there? Now we also could do this. Negative x squared minus 5x equals 0. That's going to give me the same 2 answers. Which one's easier to factor though? The one that's got a positive number in front of x squared. So we always want to choose to move stuff to make the x squared term, the a value, positive. All right, here's everybody's favorite kind of factoring. Yeah, please be careful. I still have kids who just get stumped on these problems right here. That's a binomial. That's not normal. It's either going to be difference of 2 squares or GCF. What's the only thing I can do to this problem? GCF. That's all I've got to do is take out the GCF, which is x, and I'm left with x plus 5. These are my two factors. It didn't factor into two binomials. It factored into a GCF and then the binomial that was left. Anytime you have a GCF with a letter in it, what's one of your answers automatically? 0. Because you set each little factor equal to 0 and then you keep solving. Well, that one's already solved. This one, you just have one little baby step. Move that 5 over and you get negative 5. 0 and negative 5 both work in this problem. 0 is super easy to check. What's 0 squared? What's the opposite of 0? And what's 5 times 0? 0 absolutely works. Negative 5 works too. You got to be careful though when you try to check it. This is the opposite of negative 5 squared. Equals 5 times negative 5. This would be 25, and the opposite of that is negative 25, and over here you also get negative 25. Okay, the question was, how did I get 0? Anytime you have a GCF that's got a letter in it, then automatically one of your answers is going to be 0. Do you see how x is one of my factors? You're supposed to take each factor and set it equal to 0, and then you keep solving the equation. This one's already solved. This one you just had to move the 5 over. Okay, let's do another one like that. Let's just refresh your memory. What if you had 4x squared minus 12x equals 0? That one's already in standard form. But I want to make sure you are comfortable with factoring those weird cases. This is not a normal problem. It's not normal because why? It's a binomial. It's missing a C value. It's missing something. That's not normal. In those cases, it's either difference of two squares or a GCF, and sometimes it's both. Is this difference of two squares? I don't think so. 12 isn't a perfect square. Does it have a GCF? Absolutely. It's definitely a GCF problem. 4x. What am I left with? Okay, now here are my two factors. What is one of my solutions automatically? 0. If you have a GCF with a letter in it, then 0 is one of your answers. This is why. You set each factor equal to 0 and you solve the equation. Some kids have trouble with this easy equation. You got to divide by 4. What's 0 divided by anything? 0. So definitely x is 0 is one of the answers. And what's the answer here? 3. 0 and 3 both work. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 9 is 36. 12 times 3 is 36. 36 minus 36 equals 0. Definitely 3 works. 0 works as well. You'd get 4 times 0 squared, which is a giant 0, minus 12 times 0, which is a giant 0. And 0 minus 0 is 0. All right, number 5. You try this one on your own, please. This one's going to have a fraction answer, by the way. How can I tell just by looking at this? I probably will get a fraction answer. The value in front of x squared, the a value, is not just a 1. If you've got a number besides 1 in front of x squared, you're probably going to get a fraction answer. Now, what do you want to move here? I would move the 4 and the minus 7x. Then factor it, solve it. One of your answers will be a fraction. Okay, the first thing I did was I put it in standard form. I got 2x squared plus 7x minus 4 equals 0. Are we okay with that? Then we're looking for factors of negative 8. 8 times c is negative 8, and it must add up to positive 7. Now, if this is a negative total here, a negative 8, that means your signs have to be different. Positive and negative. Why is it what? Right, if I want to move these two, I've already got a positive number in front of x squared, so 2x squared, I don't want to move it. I want to add 7x to both sides, and I'm going to stick it over here on this, behind the 2x squared, and I want to get rid of the 4. Well, to get rid of a positive 4, I've got to subtract 4 from both sides. That would leave nothing over here. And then a positive 7x and a minus 4. Anytime you're just moving something to the other side of the equation, it's going to change signs. So if it's a 4 over here, and I'm going to stick it on the other side, it's going to become a negative 4. You can definitely move the 2x squared. Then you would have negative 2x squared minus 7x plus 4 equals 0, and you are welcome to do that. However, we have never practiced factoring when your first term here is negative. It does make it trickier. And if you don't have a problem with that, then you are certainly welcome to do that. To me, it makes it harder to factor, though. But you still should get the same answer. It would still be a negative 8, though. Wouldn't it? Because you'd have a negative 2 and positive 4, so you're still trying to multiply to give negative 8. Okay, so the factors that are going to work here would be a positive 8 and a negative 1. That multiplies to give negative 8, and it adds up to positive 7. Yeah, I would put the negative 1 first. So 2x squared minus x plus 8x minus 4 equals 0. Take out an x here, and you're left with 2x minus 1. Take out a 4 here, and you're left with 2x minus 1. So the factors were 2x minus 1 times x plus 4. Here come my two solutions. This one's super easy. If x plus 4 equals 0, what's x? Negative 4. One of my solutions is negative 4. What about this one? That one would be positive 1/2. If 2x minus 1 equals 0, move the 1 over. You get 2x equals 1, and then divide by 2. So your solutions here should have been 1/2 and negative 4. And you're going to have a bunch with fractions on your homework. Mia, are you okay with that? You got 1/2 and negative 4? All right, one more question. Look at this, please. You will have some word problems. Okay, read this to yourself, please. Let it sink in. The square of a number is 6 less than 5 times the number. Find the number, or in this case, numbers. How would we make that into an equation? Well, what would the square of a number be? What do we want to put where we see the words a number? X. So what would the square of x be? X squared. What is going to translate to? How would I write 6 less than 5 times the number? Exactly. That's exactly what the words are saying. The square of a number is 6 less than 5 times the number. We got to put it in standard form, we got to factor it, and then we got to find the solutions. Now, what do you want to move on this one? I would move the 5x and the negative 6. So it's going to turn into negative 5x and positive 6. Please be careful, because on this one it seems like there might be two possibilities, because 6 could be 3 and 2 or 6 and 1, and both of those could make a 5. But you got to make sure the signs work too. Okay, what did y'all get? I got 2 and 3. Okay, this is what I was talking about a second ago, Chris. You got to make sure your signs work. Okay, a times, once I put this in standard form, x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. We're trying to get a product of 6 that adds up to negative 5. And it looks like 1 and 6 could work. They can make a negative 5. But to make a negative 5 out of 1 and 6, you got to have different signs. And if you have different signs, then you're not going to get a positive 6. So it can't be 1 and 6. It's got to be 2 and 3. If they're both negative, then that adds up to negative 5 and it multiplies to positive 6. So you got to make sure the signs work. 2 and 3 was the winning. Negative 2 and negative 3 were the winning pair. So this factored into x minus 2 times x minus 3 after you do all the GCF steps. So then the solutions are positive 2, positive 3. Okay, your homework is going to be on page 194. through 28. That's 15 questions. And you have time to get started right now. 194, 14 to 28.